This is Saturday Agenda with Chris Kenny.
Welcome to the program. I'm all fresh after a week away. Lots happening again across the nation this week. We'll go through all of it with you today. You may have seen advertised Matthias Cormann would have been our regular panellist today. He is unable to make it. No problems there. He's okay, but he's on a plane at the moment. So filling in for him today is Liberal MP, the member for Kooyong, Josh Frydenberg from Melbourne. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Good morning, Chris.
And in the studio here with me is a regular panellist and Labor Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Matt Thistlethwaite. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
G'day, Chris. Welcome back.
Thanks very much. Look, let's start with you, Matt. I want to talk about a story that's emerged in the Australian this morning about Barnaby Joyce and the baby bonus. Now, we know, of course, that your government, your Treasurer, in the budget this month got rid of the baby bonus, scrapped it. That's been welcomed by a lot of commentators and a lot of people in the community. And the opposition has said officially they'll happy to take that saving. They're not going to oppose that saving. But Barnaby Joyce has broken ranks now. He says the baby bonus should stay, in particular because without it, he says women in rural and regional areas who are perhaps less likely to work and less likely to earn a significant income in their work will miss out. Is that a reasonable concern of his?
Well, firstly, Chris, we're not getting rid of the baby bonus. What we're doing is better targeting it and making it more affordable. So anyone that receives family tax benefits will still be eligible for a $2,000 baby bonus. But the bit broader question here for the Liberal Party is that this is an example of the seething tension that's underlying some division in the coalition at the moment. Barnaby Joyce has obviously got a different view on an important policy issue such as this to his leadership. But more importantly today, we've seen Adrian Piccoli, the New South Wales Education Minister, come out and slam Christopher Pyne over his approach to the Gonski reforms, indicating that it is in the best interests of the people of New South Wales and students in New South Wales for the coalition to sign up to this plan.
Okay,
and I think that demonstrates that Christopher Pyne and Tony Abbott are wrong on the education reforms.
OK, there's a lot of politics in that answer, Matt, and we'll certainly take up those divisions with Josh in a moment. But coming back to the policy, Barnaby Joyce is right. Of course, you are getting rid of the baby bonus, and the opposition have officially agreed with that. What was a $5,000 upfront payment for a woman who has a baby is now, as you say, reduced to a $2,000 tax benefit. So you are getting rid of the baby bonus. It's no good sitting here and saying you're not doing that.
Well, the payment still exists for low-income workers, but it's better targeted. It's more affordable.
A $2,000 payment through the tax system, which is obviously means-tested, as opposed to a $5,000 means-tested payment.
Yeah, it's a reduction in the amount of the payment and a reduction in the number of recipients. It's much better targeted, and I draw your attention to the fact that 70% of Australians support the decision in published polls over recent weeks, and I think that's a good indicator that the government's got this one right.
Josh Frydenberg, the issue here for the opposition, for the coalition, is this one of division. Barnaby Joyce, a leading figure, of course, the Senate leader of the Nationals in the Senate, a leading figure in the National Party. Many speak about being the next leader of the National Party. He's saying not only is he against the abolition of the baby bonus, but he sees that as something that most Nationals are against. So this is very much something that is dividing the coalition as we speak.
It's not dividing the coalition, Chris, but I saw Barnaby's comments as reported today. He has a voice at the shadow cabinet table. Unlike the Labor Party, the coalition runs proper shadow cabinet meetings and shadow cabinet processes, and that issue will be played out. But we are united on one thing, and that is we are committed to bringing the budget back into the black. We've been promised surplus after surplus. None of them have been delivered. We've had the 5 biggest deficits in the history of Australia. So of course we've got to find savings. We've got to pay back that debt. We've got to reduce the interest burden that's crippling future generations, and there's going to be some tough decisions to make. I do point out that the baby bonus was introduced by John Howard, and it's done a lot of good since then.
Well, but this is the point. Let's get to the substance of Barnaby Joyce's criticism. He says that women living in rural and regional areas are less likely to be employed, less likely to earn a substantial amount of income through any part-time or full-time employment, and they'll miss out. That this baby bonus has been particularly good for them, and they will miss out because they're less likely to access paid parental leave.
Look, Barnaby makes some good points, but I'm not going to preempt any discussion around a cabinet table, a shadow cabinet table, of which I'm certainly not part, but, you know, it may come up in the party room. But there is a bigger point here, Chris, and the bigger point is we are in an economic crisis at the moment. We've seen jobs being slashed at Ford this week. We've seen major building projects being postponed.
We will get onto the car industry in a moment.
Chris, but the bigger point is that the budget is in crisis, and we're going to have to take some tough decisions in order to get it back into the black.
In other words, in the ideal world, you would prefer to keep the baby bonus because it actually supports women who are not in the workforce.
Well, we had been talking about keeping the baby bonus, but, you know, at the end of the day, we've got to balance the books, and that's why we're going to take some tough decisions. And I'm with Joe Hockey on this, and we'll see what the party room decides.
I have to take issue with what Josh has pointed out there. If our nation's finances are in such a bad state as the Coalition says, why have the 3 independent ratings agencies given our economy a tick of approval by granting a AAA credit rating yet again? Either the Gillard government is right or the ratings agencies are wrong. Now, these people in the coalition that are making these claims need to come out and tell us whether the ratings agencies are wrong or the Gillard government is right. Our nation's finances...
Josh Frydenberg, it's a powerful point.
No, it's not at all. It's a furphy. The clearest point is this. Under the Coalition, when John Howard and Peter Costello ran the books, they got upgrade after upgrade. They never got a downgrade. I think it was 13 consecutive upgrades to AAA rating. You know, we produced a 10 budget surpluses. We left $70 billion in the bank. The only way that the Gillard and Rudd governments were able to sail through the global financial crisis was because of the state of the books that we bequeathed them.
Let's get to the heart. Let's get to the heart, though, of Matt Thistlethwaite's point, and that is that Australia has a AAA credit rating now. Even though we've seen the budget position deteriorate, we've had a series of record deficits and debt has blown out to over 10% of GDP, there is still a AAA credit rating. So that's a very strong defence of the budget situation.
It's not at all, because even in this budget that they just announced, they predicted lower growth and higher unemployment. And as you point out, Chris, there is higher debt, which is, you know, going to break through the $300 billion debt ceiling. So, you know, this government shouldn't be broadcasting the success of its economic plan. In fact, it's quite the contrary. We've gone backwards, and it was only because of the legacy that was bequeathed by John Howard and Peter Costello that we're in, you know, the state that we're in at the moment.
These are independent bodies, independent forecasting bodies, and for the first time in our nation's history, all three of them give our nation a AAA rating. Now, that's something that never occurred under the Howard years, and you just want to airbrush away the effect of the global financial crisis on our economy. You need to admit that this government has done a wonderful job in managing our nation's finances and our fiscal position, and that's led to growth and jobs in our economy.
Well, that is just a very try-hard attempt to brush over the fact that you've produced the 5 biggest deficits in the history of Australia. You've overseen higher unemployment, lower growth and falling productivity.
Well, we will move on from that, but I think it is an interesting topic and an interesting defence from Matt Thistlethwaite. You better hope that the next rating movement is at least static. You don't want anything to go down if you're going to hinge all of your argument on that one. But I do want to move on to broader economic issues, and in particular the car industry. Obviously, this week's closure announcement about forthcoming closure from the Ford plants in Melbourne is devastating news for particular communities. It's something that many people have been predicting for a long while, and I think it's an area where I would disagree with governments, state and federal, Liberal and Labor, the amount of money they've tipped into the car industry. Josh Frydenberg, in the end, the sort of corporate welfare that has been propping up the car industry in Australia for decades surely must stop.
Well, there's a few points to make here. Firstly, as you say, it is extremely sad for the workers involved, for their families and for the local communities. That's the first important point. The second is that the figures, the numbers tell a very powerful story here, Chris. The automotive sector under the Howard government, or during the time of the Howard government, productivity went up 22%, employment went up 22%. There was more than 174% increase in exports. all those numbers have actually gone backwards, including turnover has gone backwards under this Labor government. And you can point to things like the carbon tax, which is a $400 impost on every car, or $460 million over the next decade. The re-regulation of the labour market and the increased power for the unions, the more than 20,000 regulations that have been introduced, and the list goes on. You know, cash for clunkers and the green car program, which never eventuated. So what we're going to do,
we'll take those up with Matt Thistlethwaite in a moment. But the point is that apart from all of those factors, government, state and federal, have been pumping money into the car firms for decades, as well as, of course, still offering reduced but some tariff protection. Surely in the end the industry has to either stand or fall on its own 2 feet. Taxpayers should not be subsidising it.
Well, we've got the automotive transformation scheme, and as you know, the companies need to meet certain benchmarks about investment in R&D, in their vehicle and plant capacity, and also meeting production targets. Now, payments under that automotive transformation scheme are conditional upon meeting those targets. The Gillard government, in fact, you know, in January last year, went out and gave a $34 million handout to Ford before that even met those targets. What we've said is we're going to hold the companies to account here. We want transparency in their performance, and we're going to make our payments conditional upon that. The second thing is we're going to get the Productivity Commission to do a proper report to look at if we're being efficient and effective in making these contributions to the car industry. And we need to encourage these companies to export more. They can't meet, you know, the domestic market alone. They need, in order to be viable and effective, they need to export much more than they do. In fact, you know, if you go back to 2005, Chris, 25% of cars in Australia were sold in Australia were Australian made. Today it's only 12.5%, and you need to make up those numbers by exporting, and we believe we've got a plan for that, unlike the Labor Party, which has just been throwing away money without asking the companies to meet the targets and the benchmarks.
Certainly the Productivity Commission is going to be busy should Tony Abbott form government after September the 14th. Of course, Matt Thistlethwaite, we did have quite a bit of exporting going on from our car industry over the past decade. It seems to have dwindled off. Foreign car sales are up, but that's what you're going to get as you reduce tariffs, which both major parties have agreed. Have you not, in the last 5 years, been throwing good money after bad by pumping taxpayers' money into the car industry, of course, including Ford?
Well, government supports a number of industries in this country: agriculture, medical research, clean technology. It's about the economic vision for the nation and promoting those industries which fit with that economic vision. Now, our economic vision for Australia is for high growth, high skill, high wage jobs, and the car industry fits well within that particular vision, and as does clean technology, medical research. They're the sort of jobs and industries we want to be promoting, because that's where the economic advantage for Australia is going to be in the future.
I'll take up a couple of those points in a moment, but first let's just go to a couple of interview segments from during the week when we saw some division within Labor ranks over what should be happening in the car industry. Of course, as I mentioned, we've seen car tariffs come down over years, and that's had support from Labor and the coalition side of politics, but now movement from Nick Champion, who's a Labor backbencher, and his seat, the seat of Wakefield, takes in the area of Elizabeth, General Motors Holdens, north of Adelaide. So he's got a particular interest in the car industry. He thinks it's time to increase tariffs again, to go against that trend, increase tariffs, which would make foreign cars more expensive. Here's what he had to say, followed by a response from the Prime Minister.
Tariffs in the short term have to be considered, and at least considered. And I'm not talking about, you know, jacking them up to 57% forever. I'm talking about a short-term measure.
I don't believe that imposing tariffs and getting in the way of us being able to be an exporting nation by sparking potentially trade reprisals is the right strategy for Australia.
Well, Matt Thistlethwaite, the Prime Minister's right there, isn't she? Nick Champion's wrong and should clam up.
I respectfully disagree with Nick. I think the foundation of our current economic success was built on the reforms of the Hawke and Keating governments in the 80s, and one of those was trade liberalisation. It's overwhelmingly brought productive economic growth for our economy. It's reduced costs for consumers of everyday products. You know, going back 20, 30 years, the average family couldn't afford an overseas holiday because they couldn't afford the plane tickets.
Right, but they couldn't afford fewer people could afford overseas cars too, because tariffs made them more expensive. So what we're seeing through the reduction of tariffs, cheaper overseas cars, more people buying cars from overseas, this is exactly the economic reform unfolding in the way it was intended, wasn't it? This is exactly what you and the Coalition wanted to see happen.
Well, it was intended in the respect that it's made our economy much more competitive, it's made our economy much more productive, and ultimately it's resulted in jobs growth. See, what people don't say at the moment about the transition that our economy is undertaking is that, yeah, we are losing some jobs in manufacturing, and that is a difficult thing for the people involved. But what we often don't highlight is for every job we lose in manufacturing, we're creating 2 in services. And they're high-skilled jobs in medical research, in financial services. So it's because of those reforms, because of the broadening of our economic base, that we're seeing growth, efficiency and productivity in our economy.
Just quickly though, Ford of course and other manufacturing industries complaining about increasing costs. Now we've got the high dollar, higher, it's pulled back a bit of late of course, but of course when costs are increasing, a factor has to be the carbon tax, because that is increasing costs on the manufacturers as well. And in fact the carbon tax is designed to close down dirty industries so that jobs and investment shift to clean industries. So the carbon tax is a factor here, surely.
Well, the CEO of Ford never mentioned the carbon tax. It wasn't a factor in this decision, and I don't think it's right to put words in the mouths of those who've made these decisions.
Are you saying the increased cost of the carbon tax could have no bearing on the manufacturing job losses we've seen in Australia over the last few months?
Well,
not a factor.
The carbon tax is promoting clean technology and new opportunities
it is
within
increasing costs,
industry.
though. It is increasing costs. Is it not a factor in some of the job losses
the carbon
we've
tax
seen?
is doing exactly what we modelled it would do, and that is
getting rid of dirty jobs.
No, it's supporting new opportunities for manufacturing in this country, and it's about making a transition to a new economy into better skilled, higher wage jobs in clean technology. And they're the sort of jobs where the economic opportunities will come in the future, and that's what we should be promoting in our economy.
So you are conceding it has been a factor in the reduction in some of the dirty jobs we've seen over the last few months?
No, I'm not conceding that at all, because
you said it's shifting jobs into cleaner industries.
But the CEO of Ford never mentioned the carbon tax or the carbon price.
We do need to go to a break. Can you just say very clearly for us now then, so we're very clear about the government's position, that the carbon tax has not been a factor in any of the cost increases that have led to job losses in Australia in the last few months?
The carbon price is working as we said it would, and in industries where there have been cost increases, there has been support for those industries through half of the revenue being used to support those industries to make the transition into the future. And that's what this is all about, making those industries more efficient, able to compete into the future and to grow our economy and grow jobs. And the government, through using that revenue, has provided the support for those industries to make that transition, and that's what we should be doing.
We do need to go to a break. We'll be back in a moment to take up the National Disability Insurance Scheme, the levy. Was Julia Gillard late to come to the party on the levy decision? Back in a moment.
In a complex business world, exceptional thinking is critical, and this level of insightful thinking only comes from a chartered accountant. To find out more, visit thinkingthatcounts.com.au.
Hi, I'm the new girl at Coles, and here's what's new at Coles. The Coles Made Easy range, with 100% Aussie lamb shanks in a full-bodied and aromatic sauce. Already cooked for 5 hours, so you can just pop them in the oven for only 35 minutes. It's slow cooking made easy. Deliciously new. Mwah! It's part of the Coles Made Easy range, and it's new at Coles.
It's time to enjoy driving again. The BMW End of Financial Year event is on now. Rediscover your passion for driving with outstanding opportunities across the entire BMW range. On now for a strictly limited time.
Unlock the secrets of Asia with up to $575 off Peregrine Tours. Travel with no more than 15 people, private transport and 3 to 4-star accommodation for an authentic taste of Asia. Anywhere is possible with Peregrine. Book with Flight Centre by 30th of June and save up to $575 off Asia, China, India and Nepal tours. Go to flightcentre.com.au/Asia.
Call 131 600.
To stop you lot skipping breakfast, we've blended fibre from oats with low-fat milk to create new Dairy Farmers Oats Express.
Cheers, mate.
Make rush hour wholesome with Dairy Farmers Oats Express.
Technology is rapidly changing. Adapt today or be gone tomorrow. Change your business in just 3 days. Learn how to embrace technology and be more efficient, more profitable. From May 28 to 30, SEBA 2013, Australia's largest business technology event, is on at Darling Harbour. Learn from the best with world expert speakers and over 5,000 specialists. For the sake of your business, don't miss out. Book now and save at sebit.com.au.
What do we have here? 2 entrenched views. Real estate website, huh? He wants a new home. But she has some plans to renovate. Either way, I'm thinking they don't have a lot of spare time to get their loan, right?
Whether you're refinancing, renovating or buying, talk to ANZ, Australia's most awarded home lender.
My money's on the renovation.
You don't have to wait until the planets align to improve your super balance. IOOF, specialists in superannuation, investments and trustee services. To find out more, speak with your financial advisor today.
Welcome back to the program. I just want to look at the NDIS, or Disability Care Australia, as it's now entitled, a signature reform, a signature achievement of Prime Minister Julia Gillard. At least that's the way that she would have the electorate view it. Revelations in the newspaper today, Matt Thistlethwaite, that the Prime Minister was very reluctant to come to the levy to fund this scheme, the levy, of course, that was announced this month, that a number of backbenchers and other ministers have been arguing for a long time to go down the levy route. The Prime Minister didn't want to be seen to introduce another tax increase, another new tax. Is that the case? Do you think the Prime Minister's been dragged kicking and screaming to this decision? Remembering, of course, she rejected a levy when the Premiers put it to her halfway through last year.
Well, I think the Prime Minister's taken a decision, given the fiscal situation at the moment, to ensure that we firstly deliver the scheme and we do it in the most fiscally responsible manner possible. And that's, you know, credit to the Prime Minister. She's fought hard for this reform.
Yeah,
all good Labor reforms, Prime Ministers have to fight for them. And she's gone out of her way to fight for what is a difficult reform, but a necessary one for our nation. And credit to the Prime Minister, because she's seen this through despite some terrible opposition.
She was right, though, wasn't she, to resist going down the levy route, to resist yet more taxation, to try and find the money for this through budget savings. That was the right instinct, I think, from Julia Gillard, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, Chris, it's a matter of assessing what the fiscal position is at the time and making decisions based on what's in the best interests of the nation.
Exactly. So she was right not to want to go down a new tax route, but when she saw the budget was even worse shape than she thought, she took the easy way out and went for an extra tax.
Well, all good corporations assess their fiscal position on a regular basis, and you make decisions based on what you believe is sustainable in the best interest of the nation, and that's the decision the Prime Minister took on this occasion.
Okay, another issue I want to talk about this week is one that has really horrified most of us looking on. That's the massacre, the beheading of the soldier that occurred in London this week. Absolutely horrific example of one-on-one Islamic extremist terrorism, if you like, although a lot of people have been reluctant to identify what was behind this. Josh Frydenberg, there must be lessons for Australia in all of this. We saw, of course, the bombings in Boston earlier this year, and then this attack, sort of small-scale terrorism, if you like, but nonetheless the very sort of Islamic extremist terrorism that we've all been worried about. And, of course, the sorts of plots we've seen uncovered in Australia over recent years must worry us all here.
Look, you're absolutely right. It was a chilling, savage attack, and it's a reminder after Boston, and we've had the London bus bombings, and we had the bombings in Madrid, and now this attack on the streets of London, that the Islamic extremism is all there for people to see. Now, the issue is, well, what are we going to do about it? And in Australia, we are not immune. We've had over 100 Australians killed in terrorist attacks overseas. We've had the head of ASIO say that there are dangers in more than 200 Australians potentially going off to fight in Syria and coming back more radicalised. There's nearly 24 Australians sitting in jail today for terrorist offences, and we know about the attacks that were planned on Lucas Heights as well as the Holsworthy military barracks. So this is not a time to be diluting our national security legislation. This is not a time to be cutting funds from our intelligence services or our federal police.
Just let me
and
go.
that's, by the way, that's what the government's been doing. The government has cut over $300 million from the AFP.
Just let me go to Matt Thistlethwaite quickly on this. The Attorney-General Mark Dreyfus has told us that he's very concerned about Australians being radicalised in Syria, in the conflict there, and coming back to Australia. That must be a concern.
Oh, look, I think it's a long bow to draw trying to blame government changes on what's happened in this occurrence. But can I say, Chris, I don't think there's been a more horrific or haunting image in the media of recent years than that one we saw on the front page of papers yesterday. But multiculturalism is difficult. It requires leadership and a vision for where we want to take our nation and the sort of society that we wish to live in. And I urge all Australians not to resort to anger in the wake of these images, but to resort to compassion, respect, and true leadership.
And vigilance.
And vigilance, of course. No one wants to promote violence through any form of religious undertaking in this nation.
Right. Matt Thistlethwaite, thanks very much for joining us again on Saturday Agenda. Josh Frydenberg in Melbourne, thanks again. That's all from me today. I'll see you tomorrow night on Viewpoint when we'll have Immigration Minister Brendan O'Connor in the studio. In the meantime, I just want to say what a champion and a gentleman Adam Goodes is. Go Swans. Cheers.